Please click Got It when it appears on your screen. Now, if you're not familiar, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to live as they age. With nearly 38 million members and offices in every state, AARP works to strengthen communities, advocate for what matters most, with a focus on healthy security, financial resilience, and social connection. Now it's important to our disclaimer. This session is intended to be informative and educational and does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare providers for diagnosis and treatment for your specific medical needs, or for questions regarding personal health and medical conditions. And before beginning any or changing any of your treatments, activity programs, or dietary plans. Now, AARP is not responsible for the consequences of any decisions or actions taken and reliance upon or as a result from the information provided during this event. Okay, this is the best part now. Who's in the audience, Jacqueline? Who do you see?
Oh, we have people from all across the nation, especially with a subject like this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh,
We have
yes.
Wayne from San Francisco. We have Ray from Bethany Beach, Delaware. We have Allison from San Ramon, Randy from Santa Clara, Sonia from Atlanta, Anita from Apple Valley. We have Dee Dee and Joe from Tustin, Sheila from Virginia, and of course, we have Lauren from Kansas City. And guess what she said? Go Chiefs.
Yeah. Go Chiefs. Okay, that's a disclaimer. That's a disclaimer.
We have Barbara from Boston, John from Napa Valley, Sandra from California, and Natasha from Fort Worth. We have the entire nation represented, it seems, today, with a lot of people ready to have a good presentation.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacqueline. And thank everybody once again for coming in. Boy, I'm so excited. So we're delighted to have all of you join us today, and we hope that you have your coffee or tea or your other beverages with you. We're so excited to share with you the myths and mysteries of sexuality and aging. Now, to get us warmed up today, we have a poll question, and we ask you quickly to submit your answers. Now, your answers are going to be unanimous. Nobody's going to know. Don't worry. Are you comfortable talking with your doctors about your sexual life? Don't worry. Nobody's going to know. But it's a question that we would like to answer. Wow, I see the answers are really coming in. Jenna, get ready. Wow, thank you so very much, everyone. It's a lot of answers. So, Jenna, get ready. It's my pleasure to introduce our returning guest speaker, Jenna Emerson. Jenna Emerson is a health and sexuality educator with a primary focus on inclusive, shame-free, and comprehensive sexuality education. Her areas of expertise range across a wide variety of sexual topics, including sexual health, consent, healthy relationships, sexual violence prevention, pregnancy and sexually transmitted infectious preventions, pleasure, and LGBTQIA plus topics. She is also a mental health first aid trainer and coordinates events across campuses on various topics. Now, Emerson received her Master's of Education in Human Sexuality Studies from Widener University and her bachelor's degree in sociology from Seattle University. Now, originally from California, Emerson is also a two-term AmeriCorps alumna, a comedian, and a lover of quirky dogs. Now, as a reminder, please put your questions for Jen in the chat during the program, and she will answer them during the Q&A portion of our program. Let's welcome back Jenna. The Zoom floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm really, really excited to be here. Yeah, last year I was here for talking about online dating, and I hope some of you were able to make that. All right, everything look good on your end? You see the slides and everything? Great, we're ready to go. So, as Joyce said, I am originally from California, and I think I have some family on this call, which is great, from San Jose. And so if anyone else from San Jose, hello. But right now I am calling in from Vermont. So I'm happy to feel the California warmth from over here. So today we are talking about myths and mysteries of sexuality and aging. And we're going to go through some topics here. So a little bit about who I am. Joyce gave me a really good introduction. Thank you so much. And this came about because we did the online dating and started talking. And I said, I would love to do a sexual health workshop with AARP California. And a year later, they called me. And so I'm so excited to bring this to you. I do take a pleasure-centered, shame-free approach to sex ed. So you will be seeing some things that might seem a little more radical, progressive when it comes to sexuality, because ultimately, I just want to give you as much information so that you can make the decisions best for you. I don't endorse any of the things that I'm saying, any of the products I'm showing, but I want to give you just good information so you can make decisions. Just for content notes, I'm not showing anything like pornography or sexual acts or genitals in this workshop, but I will be talking about sex very explicitly. And so I hope that you can take care of whatever you need, just knowing that when we talk about sex, it can bring up memories or feelings. So definitely take care of yourself as needed. I also make the assumption that even though I'm talking about sex explicitly, I don't assume that everyone wants to have sex or is having sex right now on this call, and that's perfectly fine. When we have sex throughout our lifespans can change, and that's really normal. And just recognizing that there's a wide array of experiences here today. But all of those experiences are welcome, and all of us have a sexual health. All of us have things that we could talk to more, doctors about, and so I hope to give you some tools around that. I also want to just recognize that I'm a millennial talking to a lot of people who are older than me, and that I really do see a lot of you as experts. I think that people over the age of 50 tend to be experts in this field of just living life. And so when I come to you all, I might not teach anything new. You might know a lot of these things. Maybe it's a different context. So I might come to the group and just knowing that you have a lot of experience in this field. For example, there's a book that I put on the last slide of a resource called Magnificent Sex. And the way that this researcher studied magnificent sex was talking to people over the age of 50, saying that what makes sex in long-term relationships really great. She didn't want to talk to 20-year-olds about what makes sex great, right? They didn't have a lot of experience. So just seeing this, seeing yourselves also as experts in this. I'm not looking at the chat right now, but I know that people are looking at the chat. So if you're putting in questions, I'm going to end in about 30 minutes, and we'll have some time for questions then. But I might come to the chat a little bit, a few times, just to get some thoughts. Okay. So this is what we're going over today, and it might seem a little quick, but this is recorded, so I hope that you can go back and look at the slides again. So we're going to talk first about sexuality myths. Next, we're going to go into STIs and HIV, and then ways to protect yourself from those. Going into bodily changes, so potential changes and how to address those changes. Some tips for self-advocacy, especially in a medical setting to get the health that you need. And then I have some resources that are trusted that I recommend. So let's start with some of these common myths about sexuality and aging. And you're going to see some memes throughout that maybe are recognizable. So we're going to start with the Golden Bachelor. Maybe you watched it, but it definitely put, this myth onto primetime television, which is the myth that older adults do not have sex or are not interested in sex, and therefore should not talk about sexual health. AARP knows that this is a myth. There's a ton of things on their website about this, because the reality is that even though sexual activity rates tend to decrease with age, many older adults have sex or are interested in being sexual throughout their lives. It might go from maybe in your 30s to about 80 times a year having sex to about 20 to 40 times per year after the age of 50 or 60. So it does decrease, but it's not there. So we have this meme from Parks and Rec that says, how many of you out there are sexually active? She's at a senior center. Most people raise their hands and says, oh my. And one woman says, I have 2 partners, often at the same time. So there's not a lot of assumptions we can make about sexuality and aging. This was in a comedy sitcom, but this was just debunking some of these myths that we have. Another way to show this myth busting is that the majority of adults are still sexually active. And a recent poll even put 2/3 of retired people as interested in sex, and half of them saying that sex was important to their quality of life. So we're seeing this from the National Social Life, Health, and Aging Project, that it can decrease, but it's not there. And there's different reasons of why this might decrease, maybe divorce or losing a spouse or medical conditions, but we'll get into some of those reasons a little bit later. There's also a new trend in 2023, as documented from Pornhub's Year in Review, which shows a 77% increase of people searching for the term mature. So this is a big trend happening. And we're just seeing more and more with The Golden Bachelor, Grace and Frankie, all of these shows, which shows people over the age of 70 or 80 years old being sexual or talking about sexual health. And this makes the term mature the second most popular category amongst men. And about 13% of the views on the site Pornhub were from people over 55. So even though that's not the majority, that's still about 1 in 6. So people are still active and looking at potentially pornography. Oh, here's the second myth, that older adults no longer need to worry about STIs, thus do not need to use protection. Just because you're not looking at protection from pregnancy does not mean that you're also not looking at STI transmission. So this is also from Parks and Rec, the same scene that Leslie Knope says, does anyone know what we risk when we have unprotected sex? No one's talking about STIs. The things coming up are heart attack, falling in love, or partner dies on top of you. Again, this was in a comedic sense, but these are things that maybe you're thinking about, maybe are considerations. But these are also potentially myths. So when it comes to talking about heart attack or potential death, that is also a myth when it comes to sex. So in fact, sex is a rare trigger of heart attack or sudden death, which is even less than shoveling snow. So as long as you're not experiencing any symptoms, it's not worrisome and can actually be beneficial for your heart health. But we do need to be thinking about STIs as well. So this shows that STI rates for older patients are rising faster than any other age group. This is an age group with the lowest amount of transmissions overall. I see a hand up. Is this an urgent question? Okay, go ahead and type your question into the chat and then we can answer it at the end. Yeah. No. Okay. Someone can chat with you. So we have the largest increase, but so it might be the least, but we're seeing the largest increases out of any age group. And when we look at HIV rates of diagnosed HIV, so this is people living with HIV, over half are over the age of 50, right? So it makes up a smaller number of new diagnoses, right? Absolutely. The age group that is the most diagnosed with HIV or STIs is in the 20 to 30 range. But we are seeing the majority of people over 50 having diagnosed HIV. The symptoms and treatment could look different if you're diagnosed later in life. And with a higher number of those with this known diagnosis, it is important to screen for HIV. You might have sexual partners who have HIV. Hopefully they'll know it and can communicate with you, but it's still something that you want to protect yourself with if you are HIV negative, especially in a relationship with somebody who is HIV positive. I don't share these stats to scare you at all. This is just giving the lay of the land of that this is a concern. This is something to be thinking about. Okay, the third myth. So the third myth is that sex only refers to penile vaginal intercourse, or that you need an erection in order for sex to be quote unquote successful. So I have this meme that says erectile dysfunction pill ads everywhere. This is definitely in a lot of places. I see them all the time on television, but it's this myth that this is the only way to have sex or to have pleasurable sex. The reality is that we need to expand our definition of sex. Sex and sexuality are much more than intercourse, and you can have pleasurable sexual experiences without penetration at all if that is not something that you want to be doing. So looking at the circles of sexuality, this can show us an expanded way to look at sex and sexuality that includes sensuality. So that includes your senses, your touch, your smell, your taste, things that you hear. It also includes intimacy, which is liking and loving and caring and sharing. It's more than our sexual behaviors. So sexuality encompasses so much more. And we can all be impacted by these different areas differently across our lifespan. We can have satisfaction in one area and challenges in another. And that's really, really normal, but it's good to see. So if you have a challenge somewhere, where can you enhance it in other areas? Expanding our definition of sex also helps remind us that sex does not always have to result in orgasm. There are many more ways to have sex other than penetration, such as using mouth, hands, toys, solo, and this is more inclusive of LGBTQ people and people who do not have partners but still want to be sexual, right? So this is a good model you could look up if you'd like. In fact, AARP in a survey found that 33% of older adults used a vibrator for masturbation or sex with a partner. And there are so many different ways you can experience pleasure with a partner or yourself, and many tools you can use as well. I'll go over a few a little bit later. You can explore stimulating different places on your body and experience different types of pleasure. So if it doesn't feel good to use your genitals, penis, or your vagina in a sexual experience, there's a lot of different places on our bodies of erogenous zones that you can still experience pleasure. So now we're going to go a little bit over some STIs and HIV stats. I just have a few. You can definitely look up more. But again, this is just to bring awareness. So despite being the lowest in new infection rates of any age group, the rates of STIs, especially gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis, have doubled in the last 10 years for adults 55 and over. About 17% of new HIV diagnoses in 2017 were 50 and older, which is about 1 in 6. So it might still seem low, but it's not completely uncommon. And why this is important is it can advance the illness. So it is important to still be testing for HIV and protect yourself from HIV transmission. And among adults 60 plus who are sexually active, about 1 in 5 uses condoms. And this is the lowest condom usage of any age group. So I'm looking at y'all. I work with college students. I do a lot of condom distribution, but they are also the most likely to use condoms. So my question to you all, maybe in just a couple words of, why do you think this is? Why do you think condoms are used less often? Or why do you think STIs are on the rise with the baby boomer generation? So I'm going to open up the chat here and just see some responses. What do you think? Yeah, I'm seeing no pregnancy. Right, you're not worried about pregnancy, erection issues. Right, so condoms could impact erections. Yeah, assuming that of who gets an STI, right? Assuming that because of your age, you're no longer able to contract them. Yeah, not using condoms because of a monogamy, absolutely. Condoms can irritate the vaginal atrophy. Yeah, so you're thinking about latex, the different lube on the latex. Yeah, you think you're safe. It's more normalized, acceptable than it was during our 20s. Yeah. Yeah, some other reasons I have was that, HIV was not prevalent when you were kids. So this was something that you came to that was around when you were a little bit older. So maybe you didn't get that education when you were in high school. I also saw things around condoms being mostly associated with birth control, of who gets an STI, opportunities to talk about sexual health or learn about it, more access to different drugs to help with erections, more casual sexual partners, especially more living in retirement communities, or the rise in dating apps. These are some reasons why this could be on the rise. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to talk about safer sex. Here we go. Da, da, da. So I'm not going to show you a condom demonstration. You can look this up online on how to best use condoms, because condoms are the best tool for protection against STIs. So just a few things to note. Never use oil-based lube, such as Vaseline. Avoid spermicide. Make sure that the condoms are properly sized to fit you best. Never use them expired or stored in very hot or cold temperatures. So keep them out of cars, pockets, direct sunlight. Don't double up, and never reuse a condom. So these are just some things to kind of help you with your own condom use. I also wanted to talk a little bit about lubes that could be recommended. So a silicone lube is different than water-based lube. And again, oil is not compatible with latex, so I'm not going to talk about oil-based right now. Silicone-based lube is great if you have vaginal dryness or use in the rectum, because it doesn't need water to attach to. Water-based lube, you need water or some fluids to attach to keep it moisturized. So silicone is definitely better to last longer, smoother, thinner, but it's not safe with silicone sex toys. And there's also vaginal moisturizers. So like the KY liquid beads, you can put them in about 30 minutes before any activity, and it can lubricate for up to about 48 hours. So this is different than lubrication, but you can also combine the vaginal moisturizer maybe with a water-based lube, because it has more of that the moisture in there. So these are some things to consider that I would recommend. These are also some safer sex supplies that maybe you've never seen. So an internal condom, relatively new over the past 10 years. This could be great if it can be put into a rectum or a vagina, and you don't have to use a condom on the penis. So if you're somebody that is having difficulty with erections with a condom on. An internal condom could be a good alternative. They're also always latex free. And a dental dam can be used for oral sex on a vulva or an anus. And so that is how you can protect against something like herpes. Okay, now I know I'm going quickly, but I have a lot to cover. So now we're going to go over some bodily changes. So this is a big list, but these are just some things or some reasons why your body functioning or sexuality may change. So as we all age, there are common things to expect, such as things that you've heard of or experienced, like vaginal or clitoral atrophy due to menopause's reduction of hormones, or erectile difficulties due to arterial blood flow issues. Some of these other things happening are hormonal changes, arthritis, mobility limitations, effects of medications, chronic illnesses, pelvic floor dysfunction. Maybe you have a loss of a spouse or recently divorced, life stressors, mental health challenges, menopause, and so much more. But these can all be things that can change, and change is normal, right? We're always changing, and it's perfectly normal for your sexuality to change as your life changes and as your body changes. I have this quote from the Golden Girls that says, "No offense, Dorothy, but your cupcakes are dry and tasteless. No one ever likes your cupcakes." And Dorothy says, "My cupcakes are moist and delicious, and men love my cupcakes." So we love seeing these euphemisms in mainstream media. And they're really talking about a recent report showed that 61% of women report vaginal dryness and how it contributes to painful sex. Yet 41% of them never use lubricants or sex aids during sex with a partner. Right. So that could be an issue. Why are people, having sex that could be painful? So as a sex educator, a big thing that I'm a proponent of is don't have sex that hurts unless you want it to, because that is inclusive of some ways that people like having sex. But if it hurts and you don't want it to hurt, don't have that type of sex. There's other things you can do, and there's ways that you can get help. This is a quote from Grace and Frankie that maybe you've seen it on Netflix that says, "What about vaginal dryness? Are you worried about that?" Right. And this is a worry for a lot of people. This could be among those familiar with hormone replacement therapy, about 65% of women wouldn't consider using it to treat their menopause symptoms. And this report found that 73% of women report they are not currently treating their symptoms. Like, why do you think this is? This could be due to stigma, feeling like you have to tough it out, maybe not talking to your own mother about their experience or their symptoms. It's still taboo, there's shame, doctors not believing symptoms, lack of diagnosis. But hormone replacement therapy is an option some will opt for in relieving symptoms and feeling more pleasure during the process. This is something that you can talk to your doctor about and can be especially helpful as soon as you begin menopause. It is important to recognize the signs so that you can get the support you need and not suffer in silence. You can seek out specialists to check hormone levels and check with about sexual pleasure. And you can also rule out other conditions that might have similar side effects or symptoms. So there are lots of options, such as discussing lubricants, estrogen rings or creams, sexual aids, clitoral stimulation, etc. All these things can be really helpful. So these are some more tips for navigating these challenges. One is remember the benefits of sex. Remember why you have it or why you want to have it. It can be really great exercise, boost immunity, reduce pain, lead to longer life, strengthen the pelvic floor. It can reduce risk of prostate cancer. There's so many things that it can do. So just remembering why you wanted to do it, why you want to engage in it. Not that you have to. Also, if you are looking to continue having sex or be intimate, it might be helpful to schedule it. So make a plan for your intimacy. This can be in vacations or hotels, but schedule it with a partner. I recommend not scheduling sex with a partner. I remember scheduling intimacy, creating a container where sex could happen, but you're focused on that intimate connection rather than just the sexual practice. Also a tip on increasing comfort. So making yourself more comfortable. This can be with ambiance, music, lube, relaxation techniques. Also staying present. As we change, our bodies may change. We might have feelings that come with those changes, or frustration, insecurities. So it's really helpful to take some moments to get out of your head and into your body. This can really help get into a sexual mood. And this can be done through meditation, feeling your sensations. So if you feel that you're really in your head, start connecting to, what do I taste? What do I smell? What do I touch? Right? What do I see? Getting back to your sensuality and having a ton of self-compassion. You can also get some extra help. We have a whole sex industry here to help you, and it's only getting more and more inclusive. So this could look like a liberator pillow, sex toys if you have a disability, penis sleeves, a bump-in holder. I'm going to show you what I mean by two of these. The liberator pillow you could buy from a lot of shops. But this can really help if you have difficulty with your hips. It can help lift your hips. It can be really comfortable, or if you have sciatica or something, this can add a lot of comfort and help with mobility and positioning. And then this bump-in hands-free sex toy holder. It's something that you can put a sex toy or a penis sleeve into, that you can hold with your arms and legs rather than with your hands. So if you have arthritis or difficulty with mobility, you hug it like a pillow and it keeps it in place. So this can be really helpful if you have chronic illness or a disability that makes using a sex toy more difficult. These are just a few examples I wanted to provide you. And of course, back to Grace and Frankie. It's a show about these two women. Jane Fonda is over 80 years old, who goes into the business of making vibrators for women with arthritis. And actually, there's one on the market you could buy. So this one, Shop Aura, is an example, and you can see how it's designed differently than other sex toys to address this need. So there's a lot on the market. You can always Google some searches, but here's one example. And just remember, here's some affirmations I have for you. It's never too late to practice safer sex, to have pleasurable sexual experiences, to come out as LGBTQ or trans, share your most authentic self with the world. Never too late. It's never too late to try something new, to start a new relationship or fall in love, to be kinder to your body, or to heal your sexual shame, right? Never, never too late. We are always working on this. Here's a book by Shannon Dowler. I have it in the notes at the end, who wrote Never Too Late, Your Guide to Safer Sex After 60. And I have this quote from Schitt's Creek that I really like. And this is when Moira Rose says, "Allow me to offer you some advice. Take 1,000 naked pictures of yourself now. You may currently think, oh, I'm too spooky, or nobody wants to see these tiny boobies. But believe me, one day you will look at those photos with much kinder eyes and say, dear God, I was a beautiful thing." And you can do this at any age. You can do this right now. So my question to you, you can put in the chat if you feel brave, or just write in your notebook, what are 1 to 2 things that you could be kinder to yourself about today when it comes to your body, sex, or sexuality? It can just be one affirmation of, it's okay that my body is changing. That is a very kind sentiment to yourself, right? So write down, like I said, in the chat or in your notes. I'll give you a minute. What could you be kinder about to yourself right now? Okay. and hold that with you. And I hope that you can practice some of that kindness today. So I want to go over some of the medical self-advocacy. So these are things that you could talk to your primary care doctor about. These are perfectly acceptable things that they can discuss with you. They can talk about sexual functioning challenges with you, pain with sex, increasing sexual pleasure, something like vaginal dryness or clitoral atrophy. They can talk about STI, HIV, and HPV testing options. They can help check hormone levels, and they can also help with menopause management. If for some reason, some of these they don't feel like they can talk about, but you bring up, they can always refer you to somebody else. Also, a note is that Medicare no longer recommends HIV or STI or pelvic tests and does not typically talk about sexual health in their intake forms. So therefore, you can't wait for your doctor to bring it up because they're not recommended to, they're not required to anymore. But we know, looking at the stats, that it still really impacts your life and your sexual health. So it might be on you to bring it up. Here are a few tips on advocating for your sexual health. So I just want to give a shout out to somebody who helped me with this. My mom is here. I actually see you. And she's done a lot of work in her own life on navigating, especially menopause specialists and treatments, and gave me a lot of advice to give to you all about some ways you can advocate for yourself, because you have to figure this out kind of on your own sometimes. So one, definitely bring it up, especially if you have new partners or concerns. Bring up testing, bring up different, if you have pain, things like that. It can also be helpful to write it out. So bring your list of questions, hand it to your doctor, have them read it, or you read it out loud. Bring materials to take notes is a good tip. So you can ask them for a recommendation. What lube do you recommend? What books do you recommend? What specialist should I go to? You can also get a referral. So these are some examples of people you can refer to: gynecologists, urologists, menopause specialists, endocrinologists, sex therapists or therapists. So when you see a specialist, they kind of know why you're there, which can sometimes be easier to talk about sensitive issues or challenges than with your primary care. So this could be a great option. Keep a symptom diary can be really helpful. So record how often, or if you're having hot flashes, mood swings, sores, rashes, dryness. This can help with diagnosis and referral as well. And things change, our bodies are changing, and it's important to be kind to yourself every step of the way. And just look at this somewhat objectively if you can, of nothing's wrong with you. We just need to navigate it a little bit differently. And then also advocate for sexual pleasure, or just pleasure in general. It's not just about sexual functioning, right? And there are many options available to reduce pain if you have pain. So if they're saying, well, your vagina looks fine to me, you're like, but it hurts. That's important too, okay? Your pleasure is important, not just function. And then ending this with just some resources I have. So some books, a book just came out called Come Together from Emily Nagoski about sex in long-term relationships, highly recommended. Magnificent Sex, like I said, researched people over the age of 50 for this. What Fresh Hell Is This is about menopause. We have some podcasts you can check out. The AARP website is really great. I got some really great information from them. These are some specialists I recommend. Dr. Maria Uloko just started a business around menopause support groups. Dr. Jane Fleshman is a great sexologist talking about sex after 60 and pleasure, as well as some other folks. And then here are some recommendations I have for adult stores online. So Good Vibrations tend to be stores in California. You can talk to people in these stores about about what toys to buy, assistive devices, lubricants. You can also, these are some places I recommend. Shop NB, Spectre Boutique, Bellessa, Earth and Salt are all places you can go. So thank you so much. I'm going to go to some questions. I think I have a moderator here to help me. And I know that was really fast, but
yeah, we do have some questions. Make me blush, people. Thank you for that.
So before we go into that one really quick, so thank you so very much, Jenna, for that excellent information you've shared. We so appreciate helping us with those myths and mysteries of sexuality aging. So again, so please put your questions in the chat so Jenna can go over it. Okay, Jacqueline, take it away.
Okay. Whew. Okay. One is, lady says that that my body may change, but I don't think of my sexuality changing. Does that mean I'm more sexual or less sexual?
I don't know if there's a more or a less. I think that we just adapt. And I think that the amount of sex that you're having, as long as you're satisfied with it, is all good. There's not any number of how much you should be having if you want it to be more or less, but are you good with it? Do you feel happy with it? That's what matters.
Okay. And a comment, our vagina, etc., are muscles. Don't they atrophy when not used at all? When these muscles aren't used, isn't it better to use them regularly?
Yes. So that is exactly right. So vaginal atrophy, clitoral atrophy, we don't often talk about clitoral atrophy, but it is somewhat of this if you don't use it, you lose it scenario, which is that regularly stimulating your clitoris or specifically your clitoris, even if it does not result in orgasm, even if it's not sexual, just getting blood flow there can be really helpful for your overall sexual health because it's a blood flow issue. And so if your blood is not flowing to your clitoris, then it can begin to atrophy. And that can also, the clitoris also has a role in your pelvic floor functioning. So it's all interconnected. All of this pelvic region is interconnected. So this does not mean that you have to be engaging in penetrative sex all the time. This just looks like, are you touching, are you able to get blood flow there? Are you touching yourself? And this can be done without a partner as well. So this could be another reason why masturbation could be helpful.
Okay. You mentioned specialists. So what type of specialist? Because there's comfort talking to your doctor, but a lot of times you don't get an adequate response. They just talk about the general health as opposed to what you really want to know.
Yeah, so you could talk to a gynecologist, could be really helpful if you have vaginal or clitoral issues. A urologist can be helpful for that as well, and also for penile issues. A menopause specialist could be really helpful. And then if you think that it's more relational or psychological, sometimes sex therapy is a really great specialist to go to because you're like, okay, we got the functioning, but it's how I feel about it. It's the connection to your partner, the relationship aspect that could be useful. Couples or sex therapy could be really helpful. I love some people putting in some more resources in the chat too. So thank you, Mac, for that. Joan Pierce, shout out.
Can one still do oral sex if vaginal lubricants are used?
Yes. So if you're using a vaginal lubricant, you can still perform oral sex on that. I would say that you probably don't need the lubricant on the outside. The worst case scenario is that it tastes weird. And so that can just be preference, but you can always just use a napkin and tissue and wipe it off before performing oral sex. But it shouldn't be an issue. I would say definitely don't put anything with like spermicide. I don't think that's necessarily an issue. the only issue with that is it can numb your tongue. So be careful. Don't use anything with a numbing feature. You don't want that in your mouth.
Thanks for that. What about hyaluronic acid vaginal suppositories?
I'm actually not sure about that. So I would say that's a great question to write down for a doctor visit if that is specific to you. Because is that for UTI or yeast infections? I'm not really sure. But yeah, good to talk to a doctor. Oh, a vaginal moisturizer. Yeah, I think that these are really good questions to ask your healthcare providers.
Can you talk about any specific exercises that are helpful?
Exercises?
Meaning, I'm sure they mean vaginal exercises. Well, I'm not sure, but like the pelvic thing.
Yeah, I think that yeah, looking at pelvic floor. So if you have vaginal tightness at all, being able to open up your pelvic floor can be really helpful. So there are some hip openers, some hip exercises that can help lift the pelvic floor, and that can just make it a little more comfortable for any vaginal anything going into the vagina. And yeah, and the best thing for atrophy then is lubrication, just making it so that you're not creating these tears. But always helpful to be working with the pelvic floor. I know that's a big issue too, because it has to do with, urination and incontinence is a big issue. So just knowing that any work you do with your pelvic floor will also help your sex life.
Is it painful to have sex after years of celibacy?
So this depends. This depends on, I would probably ask you if you've ever had pain with sex in the past. If you've had years of celibacy, I would probably recommend inserting something smaller than a penis, so a dildo or a finger, before any penile insertion. So this could be with solo sex. You could buy a small vibrator or a small dildo and just begin to introduce that to your body. That could reduce pain. So I don't know if it would be painful for you. It might be psychological. You might tense up because you're not used to it, and that can create a mind-body disconnection. So if you're nervous about the pain, it might be painful because your body might respond in that way. So I would say start with something small, start slow, start with fingers, see how that feels. And if that feels really good, then you can use something like a penis. But I wouldn't go right into that necessarily. You want to warm up. Somebody said vagina is a muscle. That's right. So you definitely want to warm it up, and yeah, take your time, see how that feels. But I think that you could reduce the pain if it's painful.
Yeah. And what can I do if a question attack is, what can I do if my medications cause me not to enjoy sex?
Yeah, so if your medications cause you to not enjoy sex, I would look at that circles of sexuality again and see, okay, well, which areas do I find pleasure? Do I really like dating? Do I really like the intimacy of being in love? You can, it doesn't mean you can't be in a relationship. You can still date, be in love, travel the world. There's, we also get pleasure through things like food. We get pleasure through things like exercise, right? Things that make you feel good. I would say focus on some things that make your body really feel good. And don't think that you have no access to pleasure because being sexual doesn't feel good to you at this moment. So look at your whole life and say, how can I just increase more pleasure into my life?
You touched on this a little bit. Is it okay if everything is not quite as perky as it once was?
Wait, can you repeat that?
is it okay if everything is not quite as perky as it once was? You know, everything's not up where it should be or downward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is totally fine. And the more comfortable you are in your body, the better sex you're going to have too. So this can also be comfort, and it doesn't have to be confident, but just comfort and feeling okay. And, that self-compassion can be really, really helpful in getting in touch with your body, which is really helpful for our sexual functioning as well.
Okay. Okay. You did this a little bit, but can you go a little deeper? Address the issue of sex after years of celibacy with the explanation of what is an estrogen ring.
Yeah, so talking about the sex after celibacy, I would say, again, start slow. Somebody in the chat wrote about vaginal dilators. Those could be really helpful for reintroducing. So those are dildos at varying sizes that could be really small as a pinky. So starting with that. Estrogen rings, I believe, are little hormonal rings that you would put into the vaginal canal that slowly secrete estrogen, and it would be more concentrated into the vagina. So it's very similar to birth control methods that are concentrated to a specific location, like an IUD or a NuvaRing. And so it's not something that you would do or take orally, so when it go through your organs or digestive system. So it's just another way of introducing estrogen into your body, or hormone replacement therapy.
And one question, what exactly is clitoral atrophy?
So clitoral atrophy is when your clitoris stops getting blood flow, and your clitoris can decrease in size. And with it decreasing in size, what we know about the clitoris is that it's about 3 to 4 inches long internally, but the little bit, the glans, is the external part. What can happen is that glans can kind of skirt into your body a bit, which could make it more difficult to reach the glans. So that is why it's recommended to regularly or monthly just like check about, what is the feeling, getting blood moving there, just to see if you still feel it. That's why vibrators can be really helpful, and especially the clitoral things that say like air pulse or suction toys are what they're called. They're not actually suctioning, they're more pulsing air out, can be really helpful because that gets to the internal clitoris feeling. And so I recommend looking up suction or air pulse toys. A really popular one right now is the Satisfyer Pro 2 Gen 3, all these different words, but Satisfyer has a great brand. Suki has is a great brand for that. The Rose, maybe you've seen the Rose. I would say I would recommend those if you're experiencing less clitoral stimulation, more so than a vibrator that just has a vibrating setting.
Yeah. And maybe one more. This is a recommendation. Someone is recommending asking when you want to talk to a specialist, a gynecologist, about sex issues, because they are more specialized in this area than primary care doctors.
Yeah, I love all the recommendations. We have podcasts about You Are Not Broken. I also really love this. I should have put this as a specialist too, which is pelvic floor physical therapy. So Shelly, thank you for putting that in there. That is a great resource, especially for pain with sex. Can be really helpful to see if pelvic floor. They can also help with the clitoris, because the pelvic floor and clitoris do have a connection. The pelvic floor does need to expand and contract and needs the space to do that. And if it can't do that, it also can't pump blood to the clitoris. So they are very, very connected.
Okay. And one last question. We have a lot. So I know a lot of people will be looking at the YouTube channel. How do you talk about herpes to a new partner?
Yeah, so herpes is something that is really common, and people, about 1 in 4 people have different types of herpes, and it's not life-threatening. So talking about it with a partner could just be, hey, this is something, I have a diagnosis, or I've tested positive for herpes in the past. I just want you to let you know. And then you talk about what protection looks like for you. Therefore, I want to use condoms. Therefore, I want to use a dental dam for oral, or whatever you're talking about. But I think being open and honest is really important. Talking about STI status in general is really important. So this can just be part of the story. Having herpes does not mean that you can't have sex, even though it's not curable. So that means that if you get it, you can't get rid of it the way that you can for bacterial like chlamydia or gonorrhea. But you can manage it. So you can take antiviral medication, or you can say, hey, I have herpes, but it's not detectable, but it's not transmittable. Or if you have an outbreak, you can let somebody know when you have an outbreak and say, hey, I have an outbreak. I don't want to have sex while I have an outbreak, but I'll let you know when it goes away. So there's some ways that you can navigate that with a new partner, but I think being honest and open, and then letting them make decisions about their own sexual health as well.
Okay. Joyce, we can't get through all of them, so back to you.
Woo! That was exhausting, but it was educational. So much, Jenna. And Jacqueline, thank you also. Before we close out, we'd like to take a course about what you've learned. And I'm sure you learned a lot. So please put in the chat what questions you have answered today. Please put in the chat again some of the things that was answered for you today. And Jacqueline, for a few minutes, just kind of look at it and see what we have.
Okay, excellent program, of course. Thank you. Very clear. Can we hear issues for men also? Most issues had to do with women. Men don't have orgasms even. What? I don't think I'm reading it right. Men who don't have orgasms even though they get an erection. So really appreciate it, AARP and Jenna. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
Maybe
alternative.
one. Yeah, maybe one more.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Figured
so
about
much.
that.
Perfect. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jenna, whew, great. So now, if our audience is interested in rewatching this program or our previous programs, you can visit our Tea and Coffee Tuesday webpage. We have a webpage. The link is placed into the chat. Now, our upcoming events. Our Tea and Coffee Tuesday monthly meeting is Tuesday, March the 14th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Join us for a conversation with Dr. Erin Cassidy Eagle, where she talks about good sleep leads to good health. Join us for our first 2024 of our quarterly Piggy Bank Essentials on Thursday, March the 21st at 9 a.m. We will be discussing age discrimination and employment. Again, thank you. This was an absolutely wonderful, wonderful. To our guest, Jenna, you got to come back, Jenna. You was blowing up our internet. Thank you so very much, Jenna, from the University of Vermont. Our moderator, Jacqueline Cole. Perfect, Jacqueline. Our production crew, Sarita. Our text crew, specialists, Vince and Connie. And of course, our AARP staff. And I cannot forget our audience. Again, I'm Joyce Howard, your host. Thank you again for joining us today. This concludes our program.